And there is breaking news coming in. North Korea has agreed to hold high-level talks next week with Seoul. South's Unification Ministry says the talks will be held to discuss logistics for a rare inter-Korean summit. The two Koreas will each send a 3-member delegation through the border truce village of Panmunjom on Thursday. The talks will pave the way for a summit due in late April. The decision by President Moon Jae-in and North Korean leader Kim Jong-un to meet comes after recent Winter Olympics in South Korea, in which North Korea also participated. The inter-Korean summit is due to be followed by a face-to-face meeting between US President Donald Trump and Kim by the end of May. And joining us on this news broadcast is Dr. Robert Edwin Kelly, the American political analyst on inter-Korean affairs from Busan in South Korea. Dr. Kelly, welcome to WION. I would like to say that finally the Winter Olympics in South Korea have managed to usher in these talks.
Yes, they have. The Olympics went better, I think, than many people expected from an inter-Korean point of view. The joint teams helped. South Korean public opinion has moved substantially in favor of the talks. I think there's concern about Donald Trump, for example. There's a lot of chaos coming from Washington, D.C., but the Moon government has kept the momentum of the Olympics rolling.
All right. What can be expected during these talks? How will they further the ties and the conversation for the summit, which is due to take place in April end?
Yeah, that's right. I mean, probably what these initial talks will be is laying the groundwork for the two summits, right? I mean, North Korea is going to have two back-to-back major summits with the president of South Korea and then the United States. This will require a lot of preparation and effort, and that's probably what this is. One of the big issues, for example, right now is where will Donald Trump and Kim Jong-un meet, right? That's supposed to be in like 2 months, and we don't know. Obviously, denuclearization will be on the agenda. Inter-Korean cooperation on economic affairs, for example, will also be on the agenda. But it will probably be a lot of construction towards the summits because that's what really matters.
All right. Dr. Kelly, you mentioned that, there's a lot of chaos coming in from Washington. And with John Bolton now all set to step in as the new national security advisor, how do you see the political discourse changing, or will it change at all?
Yeah, I think it'll probably become more hawkish. It looks a lot like Donald Trump is building a war cabinet, for lack of a better word. Many of the people around the president now are basically hawks. The vice president is, the UN ambassador is, the new secretary of state, the one who we assume will be selected. He is, and so is John Bolton. So you have a lot of hawks around the president, and the president himself is something of a hawk. And so I think what many people are worried about, certainly what I'm worried about in the North Korean case, is that you have a lot of people who believe that the use of force against North Korea is okay. And so if the summit between Trump and Kim fails in May, then, perhaps over the summer, this war cabinet will say we have to be tougher with North Korea and consider strikes.
Right. Also, Dr. Kelly, I would like you to actually elaborate further on how this trajectory could actually change with John Bolton actually stepping in as the national security advisor for the U.S.
Sure. Yeah. Well, Bolton specifically is probably the most hawkish of the bunch, right? I mean, Bolton has a long reputation of writing fiery editorials in newspapers and stuff like that. And he's been working in think tanks for years, basically arguing that the United States should use preventative force against both North Korea and Iran. John Bolton has also argued for the use of force against places like Venezuela, Cuba, and Syria. He's probably the most aggressive hawk in the mainstream American foreign policy discourse, and he has now been selected to be national security advisor. That's why there's been so much pushback. If you look at Twitter and cable news in the last couple of days, a lot of people are genuinely concerned because a lot of people think, quite honestly, he's a warmonger. I don't know if that's really true, but he certainly, if his writing of the last 20 years is any suggestion, he will almost certainly push Donald Trump towards a greater use of force, not just in North Korea, where I am now in East Asia, but also in places like the Middle East. So it looks like a hawkish turn for the presidency.
All right. Also, do you agree that that it could have been a smoother sail for the U.S.-North Korea talks had H.R. McMaster been there?
Yeah, I think that's probably true. I mean, McMaster is more of an intellectual, I suppose. He's a little bit more sort of considered. He sees more nuance than John Bolton. I mean, Bolton is sort of famous for this, right, for not being nuanced, for being sort of very aggressive, for seeing issues in terms of black and white. And the North Koreans, the North Koreans are a tough negotiating customer. I mean, it's going to be very difficult to get in there with them and go over these details, right? We've been people like you and I have been talking about the North Korean nuclear program for 30 years, right? There's a long history here, and John Bolton doesn't really care much for that history, right? He's repeatedly dismissed talks with North Korea in the past, and so my own sense is the summit will probably not work, and then John Bolton will come to the president in June or July and say, look, I told you the summit wasn't going to work. What are we going to do now? The best thing we could do, in my opinion, would be to delay the summit for maybe 6 months or 10 months so the Americans can do more preparation, and so it might be more successful, because 9 weeks is a very short period of time. Right.
So clearly you're clearly defining that 9 weeks is a very, very short period.
Right.
On a last note, how do you think that what would be the larger areas of concern for North Korea and US during the summit, broadly sum it up?
Yeah, sure. The most important thing is denuclearization, right? And again, this is where sort of John Bolton is probably not going to be very helpful, because Bolton sort of said in the past, you should just give up the nuclear weapons. Well, the North Koreans aren't going to do that. I mean, they're just not. We're going to have to give them something really substantial, right? There's going to have to be a series of concessions and counter-concessions, and the hawks around President Trump will simply not want to make counter-concessions. They're going to make these demands. North Koreans will say no, and it's very likely the summit will actually break up as a bust within a day or two. Nothing will come of it. Beyond nuclear weapons, that's the big thing, and there are other issues too, like human rights, North Korea's economic engagement in the world, North Korea's long pattern of gangster and mafia-like behavior in the global economy, the treatment of people who have been returned to North Korea. People worry about that a lot, the gulags and the political camps and stuff like that. There's a huge array of issues, right? Not just the nukes, but so many more. And again, that's why I think many experts are worried that 9 weeks is just not enough time to lay the groundwork for all this.